Hello, and on behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, 3 Advanced Use Cases for VMware Cloud on AWS, presented by Howard Young, Director of Solution Architecture for Zadara, and Greg Newman, VP Partner Marketing for Zadara. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive an email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. And third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All attendees from today's webcast who opted in at registration will be entered into a raffle to win a $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be contacted directly by Zadara, so good luck. All right, let's get started. Greg, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Julie. Hi. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, wherever you may be joining us from. We're so glad you could make it to today's webinar, where we're going to talk about some advanced use cases for VMware Cloud on AWS. The title of today's webinar, as you can see on your screen, says 3 advanced use cases. We actually came up with a 4th, so we added that. So there's a bonus in today's webinar, and we'll talk about that later. The thing that's really interesting to Howard and I, and the reason we wanted to present this to you, is that we feel that VMware Cloud on AWS brings together 2 pioneers. You've got a pioneer in virtualization and a pioneer in hyperscale public cloud services. And we all know how much we rely on those 2 services. Certainly many of us on this webinar are big users of each of those companies' products and services. But it's a testament to the complexity of the environment in which we find ourselves operating, that even by putting those 2 together, you struggle to create a comprehensive solution that's gonna meet your use case and solve your operating needs. And so we at Zadara took a look at that and came up with some ideas and implemented some strategies and some technologies that we think you'll enjoy hearing about in today's webinar. Depending on your use case, you may find this stuff pretty handy. So as we get into it, you'll learn a lot more and some specifics about what we do and how we do it for VMware Cloud and AWS. If you have questions, and I'm sure you likely will, please put them into the questions panel over on your control panel. We will have an opportunity at the end of this webinar to talk about those questions, provide some answers to those questions. And if we're able to, we're going to try to address some of those questions on the actual slides where those questions arise. So please do make sure you put those questions in there if you have them. All right, let's dive in. There's me, Greg Newman, and here's Howard. Howard, hi, good morning. Nice to be with you.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending if you're on the East Coast or in Central Time. Glad to meet everyone today.
Let's jump into it, shall we? The agenda, like I mentioned, is we are going to talk about VMware Cloud and AWS. We're going to talk about how we might enhance those clouds and some use cases, and leave some room for Q&A. Because I'm the marketing guy, I can't help myself. I want to tell you a little bit about us at the outset, and I hope to establish a little bit of authority. You can see that we have been doing this a while. 2011, in fact, we started, and we saw early on that AWS was going to be a terrific public cloud platform, but that in fact it wouldn't be able to do everything that people need. And so we've earned our storage competency in the media sector, public sector, and we are also a marketplace seller. And that I think gives you some idea of the depth to which we're integrated with AWS. You can go find Zadara right in the marketplace, add it to your AWS environment, and then of course have it all appear on one bill. Why do we exist? Why Zadara? Well, this is it in a nutshell. We seek to deliver the control of enterprise storage with the agility of the cloud model. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's a pretty simple goal. I think, as we all know, however, while that may sound like a simple goal, it is in fact fairly tough to achieve. And I'm very proud to be part of an organization that's worked so hard to create solutions to some highly complex problems. And we'll take a look at least some of those problems today. Let's start with this. Howard, you and I were talking about this yesterday. VMware Cloud and AWS is an unalloyed good. There's no doubt about it. But it's not complete, is it?
No, it's not. It's missing a few things that either that's not complete or it costs extra money. So, for example, if you're trying to connect your on-premise to your VMware cloud in AWS, and you actually have to build out direct connects, and often there's no really good solution if you need to extend that into other cloud providers. So if you want to go to Azure or Google or even Oracle Cloud, it's not really available. And then if you want to connect your AWS VPCs, there's also an extension of that where it will cost you through transit gateways.
And I'm glad you mentioned something about the other clouds. We'll say this in a stage whisper. You know, we all know that AWS is terrific, and we're certainly talking about AWS here explicitly, but we use the other clouds too. And we, of course, continue to have storage on-prem. And the idea that you can share your storage between these different locations is absolutely critical to what we believe is our mission here at Zadara. How do we accomplish that? Well, Howard, this graphic that I put together to represent what you and I were talking about, I hope gives people some understanding. Why don't you walk us through what it is that Zadara Enterprise Cloud is all about?
Sure. What we do is we put our system inside a data center. So think of us more of like a on-premise system. And we put our system or our storage within a millisecond reach to AWS. So we're actually connected through what we call direct connects. So that gives you routing from AWS, both from any VPC. So if you want to connect your VMware cloud to us, is really straightforward with a direct connect, or we can do a what we call a connection to another VPC. So we have this a data-centric model where from a single source of data, you can actually build out connectivity between all 4 locations here shown.
You know, you raised a good point, Howard. Let's talk about data-centric for a second. I think this often gets overlooked. Maybe it's a little bit of a forest for the trees kind of a thing, but I think it's a good opportunity by you bringing it up for us to talk about it. And that is that increasingly it seems to me, and I want to hear your opinion on this, and I think our viewers and our listeners do too, as we move into a hybrid world, and clearly that's not going to change. In fact, it's only getting more complex and more locations and more for operations and things like that. Putting data at the front end of your strategic planning process for your IT systems would seem to be a smart move, rather than, as historically been the case, data kind of gets dragged along as part of the equation only at the end.
Yeah, it does. If you sort of plan ahead, you don't have to move your data around. You don't have to move your VMDK, so you don't have to do a lot of vMotion. You can have it all connected in one spot. And then if you have a different type of connection, if you want to do any DR, it makes it really simple because now you're just moving one source instead of multiple sources.
Well, that's how we see the world, of course, right? We like to think that data comes first, and increasingly I think everybody's seeing that that's the case. The data needs to be considered first. And our hope and our mission is to provide a storage system and platform whereby you never have to think about those issues again when it comes to what Howard's talking about with migrations and re-architecting in order to meet changing demands. This is an example of some of the demands that you're going to see, right, Howard? I mean, along the bottom, we can see all the ways in which operations manifest themselves, and across the top, we can see all the ways in which people seek to connect to the data.
Yeah, exactly. So what we do is we, at the very bottom layer, we provide virtual private storage. We can build out a private storage array, which consists of block or file. And we also provide object storage all within one platform. And then we have a lot of services on top of that. So if you need to bring out the antivirus or backup, this is all built into a single system. We do have a very good integration with VMware, and if you wanted to do, for example, a SRM type of movement of your workloads between 2 data centers, 2 VMS clouds, it's built into the system itself.
It's nice that way, and there's a word we like to use quite a bit, and I think it's easy to, it sounds almost euphemistic, but the word is flexibility, right? We talk a lot about flexibility, and I think this slide, this is one of my favorite slides for me, and by the way, I think the next slide may be really interesting. We'll get to it in a second for our viewers, But this slide to me encapsulates from a business operations perspective just why it's so important to view the world in terms of data first. Everything that's going on in the middle there is critical to operations, and the nature in which that has to be built out and utilized by these different audiences not only is different for each audience, but it can change over time too, right?
Oh, exactly. So we did have a question on in the chat, but we have a non-proprietary type of configuration here. Everything's built in, so you don't have to go off and buy extra licenses or anything like that too. So it gives you a very flexible medium for this type of architecture.
Yeah, that's a good, I'm so glad you saw that, Howard. I see that question. Thank you very much for putting that question in. We appreciate it. Good to be able to answer those things in real time. And we hope that what that does for everybody in a webinar like this is it turns it into more of a live discussion. We all have expectations coming into an event like this. Our time is valuable, and we want to make sure that we're giving you the information that's going to be helpful to you as you're attempting to run your operations and make good decisions. Let's look at this. This slide really represents for a lot of storage administrators and those of us that run storage for a living. This slide really represents the heart of it, doesn't it? And what's unique about Zadara. Please tell us, Howard, a little bit more about how this is all put together.
Yeah, it sure does. So we're a RAIN architecture, and RAIN is a redundant array of independent nodes. And what we do is in our colo or in your data center, we can put up a Zadara enterprise storage stack consisting of enterprise servers. And if you look at the top row, it's basically those are our physical servers, and then below that, what we do is we build out VMs. So very much like what you do today in your VMDKs, we actually spin up a dual controller, and the controllers will run in two storage nodes. They're independent, so that even if a server or storage node fails, you'll still have access to the system. So it's a highly available system. And then, for example, if you need to build out an array, let's say you need an all SSD type of array, you want to run VDI or run your databases on it, you could build out a system full of SSDs. And one of our patents is the capability to run a single user experience in a multi-tenant environment. So we have tens of petabytes in AWS, for example, that we can actually spin up thousands of customers, and we do. And what we do is we actually allocate physical resources to a VPSA, a virtual private storage array, and then we can also spin up another one which is independent of the first one. So we can have multiple users, and you can configure that with HDD, SSD, and then we also can spin up a object store. So you pretty much we could do all types of protocols within a single system.
What's interesting about this, and I think it's a good time to make this point, I hope, is that unlike cloud services where you're clearly sharing resources, right? We have private storage arrays. That's why they're called private, because you in fact have control over those resources, and those are dedicated to you and your use or that particular user. But unlike some of the newer offerings that we see from the legacy vendors, and I we all know who they are, you are not, in fact, when you're a Zadara customer, you're not tied to particular physical hardware. And we can talk in a little more detail about that, I hope, Howard, because I think this is a point at which a lot of people have a revelation about Zadara and how, in fact, we are very different than the other offerings that are out there, simply because we don't tie you to that. We, in fact, deliver what we like to say is the best of all possible worlds, right? You get all the cloud flexibility, the multi-tenant efficiency, but you're exactly right. It's a single tenant experience without being weighed down by having actual hardware that you're paying for on some kind of what would be almost a glorified lease kind of arrangement. That's not, in fact, how we do it. It's totally hardware independent.
Yeah, it's a really simple model. You basically you build out for the amount of storage that you need. So going back to this diagram here, SSDs, you have 4 drives, and we over provision our system. We have spare drives, and if you need to expand that out, you just add a couple of pair of SSDs showing in the white there that are unused, and it takes a few minutes just to scale out your storage. So you don't have to purchase ahead. It's a pure OpEx model based on a physical resource.
I think that answers the question I just saw in the questions panel about how fast can you expand storage, Zadara storage. It just takes a few minutes, right?
Yeah, a few minutes, and you can scale down too. So let's say you use those 6 drives now that you expanded, and your workload or your actual usage goes down. You just take those drives out. It's very straightforward.
And of course, repurpose those for another user at some point.
Absolutely.
Good. Oh, by the way, and I find this interesting, we don't get a lot of call for this, excuse me, but because those drives are dedicated to you, we've had customers, you know this, Howard, that have asked for the drives. They destroy them after they're done with it. Those drives
yeah, we get those requirements all the time. So if you do this in AWS, for example, with EBS, your data is on there, but what do you do if you need to have those drives back? So you may have a compliance level where you need those physical resources. So if a drive fails, for example, and we need to replace it, we could take that drive out and ship it to you, or just have it destroyed. We provide a certification of destruction in that case.
Again, another example of, when we've been doing this a long time, so we've learned, what the requirements are. But talk about meeting the need for enterprise levels, features, functionality, and control, together with the flexibility of the cloud. It really does go deep. I mean, there's a lot to it when you're living and working in an enterprise environment. Those requirements can be very serious, including the ability to control and destroy the drives. There's some other features and functions. I think we've touched on quite a few of these, Howard, but maybe we can hit some of the highlights on this screen that we haven't had a chance yet to talk about.
Yeah, within the VPSA, we have a lot of flexibility built into the system. We mentioned block file. We also do all flash, dedupe, and compression options for the array. You can scale up, scale down. One of the nice features of the VPSA is that you build out the controller based on performance. So if you need more IOPS, you can actually spin up, add additional CPUs to it. It's very straightforward. It's quick failover, and then you have higher performance in that. We also have a multi-zone capabilities in several of our AWS data centers. So if you want to have an active standby across 2 data centers, we can do that. And that'll give you a non-uniform type of storage option found in most VMware environments.
So again, really everything you'd be looking for in an enterprise storage system, we have included with, and it's no mean feat. It's, we're a mature system now. We're deployed. You'll see in a moment on another screen, we're deployed in hundreds and hundreds of points of presence across the world, and we have operations on 4 different continents for proactive monitoring. But first and foremost, security matters. We know that, you know that, and it's important to point out that in addition to being stored on dedicated hardware, we also have in-flight and at-rest encryption, and most importantly, you manage your keys, so only you control access to your data. That is something that we think is fundamental to the nature of our system, and another example of how we really try to deliver on the promise of control with agility. Howard, speaking of control, you know better than I do. What do you think of the interface we've got? I like to think that if you're familiar with managing storage, you're probably going to be real comfortable in our interface.
Yeah, it's really easy to build it out. When you build out an array, it actually it pretty much fills everything out for you. So it builds all the RAID sets and pools, and then the final step to integrate with VMware is just to export those LUNs. So you just create an iSCSI type of a connection. So it's a IQN to using your vSphere, and then you have that extra storage available for you. Usually with a file share, it's really straightforward. You just add Active Directory or LDAP integration, and then you can share that across your VMs.
You know, there's a question that came in, and I missed it earlier, but let's tackle it before we move on, and that is about upgrades. Obviously, our system does get upgraded from time to time. There's a question about do we have non-disruptive upgrades? How does that work? Howard, can you walk us through a little bit?
Excellent question. The upgrades are usually applied when we have a new version or a security fix, and we have dual controllers, so we have active and standby. The active is presenting to your VMs or to ESXi, and then we have a standby. So what we do is we upgrade the standby. We could do either a software patch or a new version, or in the case if you needed to add more CPUs, for extra performance or even scale down, what we do is we upgrade the standby controller. We do a quick failover from the active to the standby, and then we upgrade the previous active controller. And really straightforward. It's in the VMware environment, any active IOs are basically retried from the host, and it's transparent. If you do any file shares, we often recommend do that in a maintenance window, and the actual process or the failover is within a few seconds. So you don't have to spend a lot of time, any type of, as far as a maintenance window goes.
Nice, that makes sense. We have a few more slides to get through before we get to the use cases, and I do want to do that because I think that's really the part that I think people are most interested in. I want to tell you though, however, and Howard, you and I were talking about this yesterday, and I want to take a moment to point out that again, Zadara is different. One of the ways in which we're different, and it is not often appreciated by our new customers because it's such a departure from how they're used to operating that it's not recognized as something valuable. But about 6 months into each and every customer relationship, and we go back, of course, and we touch base with our customers and we ask them how they're doing and what do you like, what do you not like. Inevitably and invariably, the idea of our 24/7 proactive management comes up as something really valuable, something that was a bit unforeseen. And Howard, you know this because you're out there dealing with the customers more directly and on a technical level than I am. Issues come up all the time when it comes to managing storage. There's no end to the issues, and Zadara's approach, the proactive approach, really can pay dividends for a storage team and an IT team.
Yeah, the wealth of knowledge and support that we provide is really unsurpassed in the industry. We have a really complex integration when you start adding multiple data centers and multi-clouds, and we have a great networking team that brings everything together. That makes it really simple. We do an onboarding for all the storage and all the networking, so it makes it really simple. And then there's there's just common questions that what happens if a drive fails and who's responsible for that? And we are, of course. And there may be just well, how do you mount a drive? And these are questions we answer, and the response is very quick. It's you'll get a response within 15 minutes from support. So it's I think it's one of the gold standard type of support packages that we provide.
Yeah, it's true, and it's interesting. I think the reason we do it that way is, again, we're not a legacy company. We were started in 2011 as a service company, and I think we take the word service very seriously, and so that's at the heart of what we do. Okay, let's talk a little bit about adding Zadara to VMware Cloud, Howard. Here we have VMware Cloud on AWS. I realize I built this as a graphic that builds by clicking on it, and I'm the one doing the clicking, Howard. So I'm gonna click and get you going. So here you go.
Well, the integration level, if you look on the right outside of the VPC, we're actually in another data center. So we're in Equinix, for example, in Ashburn. And then what we do is we connect to Direct Connect using Direct Connect. So this is going to be two redundant 10 gig links. We supplied the Direct Connect, so you don't have to worry about building up that network. And then on the VPSA itself, what we do is we have the capability to provide block or file. We also have object storage you can access through here through our Zadara Object Storage VPSA. And then we provide all the infrastructure and all the tools allow you to do data protection. So if you want to do snapshots and clones, these are all built into our system, so you can do that. If you want to use any type of VMware VAI operations, we support that, so you can do those type of operations. For remote mirroring, we actually can set up a mirror from one VPSA to another region. So, for example, if you want to move your file shares, have a redundant copy at a different site, we can just do a quick snapshot into another VPSA, or we could do an object storage. But within itself, we can actually build out different types of mediums. So you don't have to worry about having all SSD or just go HDDs. We can do the migration at a click of a button, or if you use API, move it from a SSD to HDD. Very, very flexible design.
Let's take a look. You mentioned other data centers. Let's talk about extending your data center. So we'll start with the same VMware Cloud and AWS, but now we've got an on-prem environment as well.
Yeah, the direct connects are basically a BGP type of operation or a protocol. Allows you to connect. It's layer 3. We can connect 2 or more data centers to Zadara. So it's just a simple routing of adding another network. This allows you to connect to a common data source. So if you wanted to do, for example, a vMotion, you could do a vMotion between the two systems, and it's just going to be from one block to the other. And the other thing is you can share files across the data center. It's very straightforward.
It's nice. You're really putting your data front and center at this point, and that's at the heart of it, rather than being off to the side and not accessible, equally accessible by both. A little more sophisticated, Howard, we've got business continuity. That's been a topic of much discussion lately. It's all under the umbrella, of course, of data protection, and business continuity has some real demands to it, doesn't it? So you can see we've set up a little bit more complex environment.
Yeah, so with VMware, there's a lot of built-in continuity capabilities. You often have to pay for a license for that. We have this built into our system. So if you want to have 2 different locations, so the use case here would be to have something in AWS and then another system on premise. We have the capability to connect both systems, of course, but we can also spin up an array at both sites. So we would just do a remote mirroring from one location to other. It's bidirectional. So if you fail over from one site, say you fail over from your on-premise to AWS, you do your operations there, and then you can fail back, so back to on-premise. So it makes it easy to move data back and forth. This model is a little bit different, so it's not a data-centric model here. So you're actually having 2 copies, and the idea is that if any of these systems go down, you can actually access it at a different location. So, and usually the use case is in AWS, if you have a VMware Cloud in US East 1 and then US West, you can actually build up a East Coast, West Coast type of architecture that way. We also support SRM. So SRM is the Site Recovery Manager. It allows you to move your workloads across clouds. So it basically will trigger a snapshot, and then it uses our backend for that. So it's a very efficient operation.
Excellent. And this is a good time to bring up a question I see in the window. How are data transfer rates addressed between the Zadara data center and the VMC on AWS? You talked about Direct Connect earlier, Howard, but talk about data transfer rates. That's important, absolutely.
Yeah. So we provide the 10 gig links between our system and AWS. So you have theoretically 20 gig of bandwidth, but we can actually extend that out to as many direct connects as you need. So we are the largest consumer of direct connects in AWS. I believe in Ashburn area, we have about 20 different 10 gig links, and we keep expanding that as needed. If you need more than the 20, we just basically add another direct connect to the virtual private cloud, and it's just another network segment, and you can expand out as much bandwidth as you need.
Yep. Good. Well, that matters, and so that's a sophisticated user who's asking this question because he's obviously encountered before that anytime you move into an environment where things are distributed in a cloud-style environment, you do need to pay attention to things like that. Doesn't matter how great your storage is, if you've got a data transfer problem or a latency problem, that can really hold things up. All right, so let's keep moving and take a look. I think we said we had a bonus. This is our bonus: cloned production volumes, VMware Cloud in AWS, and then VMware Cloud elsewhere. And of course, cloning is another one of those sophisticated data protection uses. Talk about why somebody would want to clone and how they can take advantage of this.
Yeah, clones are a very powerful instance of an array. So we can actually clone either a file system or block device, and it's really built into our snapshots. So we're actually doing snapshots all the time, and then when you issue a snapshot, it gives you a point of time of when you trigger that. Now, let's say, for example, you're doing a snapshot of your database. You could just do a snapshot, and then it's at that point in time, you can actually mount that clone on another system. So you can do a remote clone shown here. So if you want to do a remote clone of a VPSA of your database on your production, you can actually do it from that point in time. Now the data itself is within a clone. We have a zero capacity clone, so all the data is derived off of the initial data set. And this is very powerful because now you don't have to actually make a duplicate of the data. It's just going to use the baseline, and then if there's any modification, it just creates a new branch. So you have a cloned branch, and then you can make a derived type of copy if you make any modifications. Another use case is that if you need to back out a change, so let's say you're on your file system, you find that there's some kind of issue that maybe ransomware got introduced somehow in your file system. What you can do is actually you back up to that version earlier before the ransomware was introduced. So you can back out changes, and then you can get recover really fast. So we do have we had a couple of customers actually in AWS. They had ransomware introduced into the system, and they just mounted the clone about 4 hours earlier, and they're able to clear everything up.
Wow, what a relief for them, huh?
Yeah, they were very happy.
Here's a good question. I don't want to miss it before we move on. It's, I think, something we could have addressed a little bit earlier, but or maybe you did and I missed it. The question is this: is the Zadara block storage mounted as a new data store in VMware Cloud on AWS?
Excellent question. It can be. You could do it either that way, or you could just add your data set in your pool itself and expand out your cloud that way.
Good. I'm glad we covered that. So again, thank you everybody for putting questions into the questions panel. It's great to be able to address these, and we hope it's helpful to you. We mentioned earlier we are all over the world, and we are a longtime partner with AWS. We are in 16 regions and counting. I think we've got right now, Howard, a couple we're setting up. I think we could be at even more, a couple more here pretty soon. And the reason that matters, of course, is pick the region you want to be operating in, or the multiple regions you want to be operating in, and know that Zadara can be right there alongside you. We touched on this before, but this is a terrific chart. Howard, you talked about growing and shrinking, right? And the idea of not wasting any money on storage you're not using. But that really comes into play, and those savings really add up over time. Whatever your needs might be, the fact is we know over-provisioning is a big part of what legacy storage is all about. You can't get away from it when you're buying legacy storage or leasing legacy storage. And you know, legacy storage is the standard by which we're in terms of functionality, but the cloud is the standard by which we're measured in terms of efficiency. And see, they do. When I said we bring the best of all possible worlds, this is what I'm talking about. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just a different approach, and it can, you know, it causes some customers to sort of do a double take and have to really take a moment to process this and understand that their world is suddenly very different if they work with us. Yeah,
we have one customer. They spin up 100 terabytes. They use it for 3 months. They archive it to S3 just for compliance, and then they delete it. It's so you get this peak, and then they drop back down, and then they save lots of money doing it that way. So you're not paying for that legacy storage that you would have to buy and keep around.
Right, exactly. Just spin up the drives you need, spin them down when you're done. We're proud of all of our customers. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I lose count. We keep adding them. Here's a few that are well known, and we thought we'd put them up here. But we do work with end user customers of all sizes and types. Many companies that are not on this list, and maybe not as well known as these names. We also work quite a bit with service providers. We find that our model, our pay-as-you-go model, aligns very well with managed service providers. No surprise there. You can see we have government agencies. We have manufacturers like BMW and Lumentum, the semiconductor manufacturer. We have services companies like hospitality company Great Wolf, Omnitrax doing logistics, publishers. It just runs the gamut, doesn't it, Howard? I mean, there's really, no industry, I think, yet that we haven't touched yet. We've pretty much hit everybody.
Exactly. We just have so many customers that they use different use cases, in different applications. When you're looking for a high-performing type of system in AWS on VMware Cloud, this is where customers are going to. They want the physical resource, and more important, they want the consistent performance. So they don't want from day, across different days. They don't want that change. They want that consistency.
Exactly. All right, let's do a little bit of a wrap up. I think we've touched on these issues, but I put this slide together, Howard, because I feel like it in one slide captures the essence of what we're talking about here. We are a service partner. We talked about that earlier. We do like to deliver our enterprise grade data storage in a cloud model. And it really comes down to sort of a three-legged stool model, doesn't it, right? You've got the enterprise grade performance, you've got the agility and the paying only for the drives you spin up, and then that service and the expert management. I would heartily recommend to anybody on this webinar, whether you choose Zadara or not, and certainly we hope you do, but whether you choose Zadara or not, as you think about your future and you're thinking about what you're planning to do with your data, I would keep these principles in mind, because I think they're absolutely critical if you're going to be putting together an operating system and a scheme that's going to be able to meet the many changing requirements coming up in the years we see ahead. Howard, we've got, what time is it? Let's look. Oh my goodness, we are so on time. I'm proud of us. We are getting to the end of our talk. We planned 40 minutes to do this, and we're at exactly 40 minutes. So I would invite you now, and Howard, I'm sure you would agree, there's no better way to determine whether Zadara is right for you than to just give it a spin, give it a try. Come on over for a 14-day free trial. You can see this on the screen. It's actually a very hands-on free trial. There's no credit card, by the way. There's no need to put up anything that will lock you in later. Just come spin up one of our VPSAs in one of our over 300 points of presence, one of our data centers around the world. And by spinning one of those up in one of our cloud data centers, you will, I think, very quickly see whether or not Zadara can meet your operating requirements and what you need. And our experts will be there from the moment you reach out to us through the whole setup and through the 14-day trial to make sure that you are taking advantage of all the features and functions, that you're understanding Zadara and how it's working. That's part of our commitment to you. So that's the offer. We hope you'll take us up on it and see for yourself whether this works. Okay, Howard, before we get into questions and answers, is there anything you want to add that we didn't get a chance to touch on yet, or should we dive into questions? What do you think?
I think we touched pretty much everything. Again, just to reiterate on the free trial, takes about 30 minutes to onboard you, and we'll get you going. But yeah, let's dive into some of the questions here.
Let's do it. All right. So we of course hit a few, and I'm so glad for that. Thank you for putting those in while we were going. There was a question here about, I think it says a transfer fee. I suspect that's egress fees that tie to the end user's VMC environment.
Yeah, egress fees, AWS charges egress fees for going outside of their data center. So anytime you provision a direct connect, you are responsible for egress. That's the way they charge. This is going to be consistent across all public cloud providers. Now, what we do is we provide the direct connects, so you don't have to worry about that cost. They run several $1,000s per month. But as far as egress fees go, they run about 2 cents in the US, 3 cents in the EU, a little bit more in Asia, but we provide that. They're very minimal, about $20 a terabyte.
Yeah, we do poll our customers on this, Howard, don't we? And we make sure that we understand what the impact is of egress fees. And so far, anyway, we haven't found that there's any significant impact in terms of the cost associated with egress fees. It's not to say that we are choosing to brush those away, but the cost has not been anything too significant in terms of our customers' usage. And again, many hundreds and hundreds of customers. So your mileage may vary, as they say, but it seems that this is not a cost that should be an impediment.
Yeah, usually the TCO is, for example, if you looked at object storage on Zadara versus object storage in any other cloud, the TCO is far less because we don't charge for puts and gets, for example. So even though you pay for egress, the overall total cost per gigabyte is far less.
Exactly. That's a good point you bring up. You need to look at your total cost. We do have some calculators online, by the way. I would recommend going to the Zadara website. You'll see a pricing calculator there. It's good for a ballpark. It'll give you a good sense of what you might expect to pay for different types of storage and different configurations and different capacities. And that might be a good place to start as you're thinking more about Zadara and whether this might be right for you. So do check that out on our website. It's right there in the main navigation. You'll see it. All right, so we have a few more questions, and luckily we have some time for that. I appreciate it. There was a question earlier. Let's see if I can get it right. And it was, can we move from one disk type to another on a single VPSA, or does the entire VPSA need to be moved to the single disk type? I think I'm reading that right.
Yeah, I think you are. It's a transparent migration between two different pool types. So, for example, let's say you have the use case of you load your workload onto SSDs. You may find that you may not need 50,000 IOPS on that VPSA. So you can get by with HDDs and a burstable cache. So we do provide a caching layer that sits in front of SSD. And then basically you just create a new pool, enable the cache, and then you do a migration of your data from one pool to another. This is completely transparent to the host or the guest operating system, and then once everything is migrated over, it's you just on a different media. And then often what we find is that now that you're no longer using the SSDs, you just remove them from your VPSA and you stop paying for them.
Yep. Here's a related question. Can different VPSAs be at different levels? I think I know what that's meant by levels.
Yes, yeah, we have different VPSA controllers, so you can add different number of CPUs, different performance levels. Yeah, you can have multiple different performance on your controllers. The one thing is that we can scale that up. So let's say you start off with what we call a 200 engines, 2 CPUs, very bare minimum. But as you grow into your system or add more workloads and servers, you can actually start at a small subset of your storage needs and then grow into it just by adding more CPUs, more drives.
Yeah, it's nice that way. And we've seen, you mentioned this earlier, Howard, we've seen customers that need to burst or they need to increase performance for some reason and maybe only for a specified period or because they've got a particular performance goal in mind, and then bring it back down again as needed.
You may have customers that hibernate it, so they'll run workloads, and often these are DevOps. So they when a project's over or they're going on vacation or just not working on the weekend, they'll hibernate the VPSA. So the data is still there, the drives are still allocated, but the engine is set to 0 CPUs, and then the price of that drops by the amount of CPUs that you were no longer using.
Exactly. There's hibernation. I'm so glad you brought it up. That's what I was thinking too when I thought about that. So it's an interesting feature. I don't think a lot of people consider that before working with us, because after all, when's the last time when have you ever encountered a hibernation scheme? But at Zadara you can do that, and we just love that because of course it makes us look good. It makes us look pretty flexible, which we are, and it gives you just another tool in your toolkit if you're managing storage and you're managing. Right. All right, so I want to get back to an earlier question. It was one of the first questions that came up. It was asking, is this a non-proprietary version of other similar systems we've seen? I think the non-proprietary part is really an interesting thing. I want to point it out. Take a moment to point out again. We do run on all of the industry standard hardware that all of us that manage storage for a living are comfortable with, we're used to working with, and we know can do the job, right? There's nothing exotic about our systems per se, but of course we do have our patented proprietary storage virtualization software that runs on top of that, that makes our service work.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we do have it's your data. It's we don't want to put our spin on it. We make it very flexible. For example, we have built-in object storage backup. You can back up your volume, and then basically once it's in object storage, it could be on Zadara Object Storage or AWS S3. Of course, the image and data is on us, but you can actually export that into out of the S3, the backup. You can export that onto different media. So we have utilities to convert that image into a VMDK, or you can just export it to a EBS. So we're very flexible. We want your data to go where you want it to go, not where we want it to go.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and that's the last bit that I'd like to add in terms of our approach. Again, I said we're a services company, and we mean that. We know that we have to get up every day and we have to earn your business, and we do that by providing the best service in the world when it comes to enterprise storage delivered in a cloud model. We don't do it by tricks like hanging onto your data or putting it in a proprietary format or charging egress fees. That just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like the way we want to do business. So as Howard said, it's your data. We're not trying to put our spin on it, and we're hoping to give you tools that will give you maximum flexibility an operating standpoint, from a budgeting standpoint. And so we hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about how you can take advantage of what Zadara has to offer to expand your AWS environment and expand your VMware cloud on AWS environment, along with, of course, as we mentioned, the other clouds and your on-prem data as well. Howard, anything to wrap up here? I want to give people a few minutes back. I'm sure everybody's got either the next meeting to go to or the next task to jump on, so we can wrap this up a few minutes early and give you a few minutes of your day back. Anything we should add?
No, I think we covered a lot. There's a lot of details that we can go into further. And again, I recommend coming, signing up for a free trial or just, contacting us, and we can go into a deeper dive on our technology.
Excellent, I agree. And if we've missed any questions today, you feel you didn't get a question answered, or maybe you have a question later, please do reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. You can see here, you can go to support.zadara.com if you care to, or you can go straight to our website and you'll find all kinds of ways to get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to engage with you and answer your questions. Again, Howard, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here, sir.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And VMUG, we'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to present today and to visit with your audience. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you both for taking the time to speak to us today. As a reminder to the audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the VMUG webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. And please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast, and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.